What's going on, y'all? Do us a favor, help us out with that algorithm. Click that subscribe, like, leave those comments. Who is drafted first between Max Duggan and Stetson Bennett?
So last week, I don't think we were on the air. I think it was right afterwards when we were talking about this. You asked the question, and I said it should be Bennett, but it's probably going to be Duggan. And that was before, obviously, the combine. Now I'm changing that. It is Stetson Bennett, and it's really not even close. Max Duggan's a nice story, but Max Duggan is not nearly as ready for the NFL as Stetson Bennett is. And the combine started to show that. Obviously, we'll get into more of that, but he wasn't nearly as accurate. His measurables might be slightly better just because he's a little bit taller, a little bit thicker framed. Speed slightly faster, right? He's just a touch faster than what Stetson Bennett is. He's not as accurate. He doesn't make decisions as quickly. His footwork's not as polished. Like, this is where Stetson Bennett being in a Todd Monken offense is making him pro ready. Like, I think that's really part of how easy Monken made Bennett's transition from college and to what's going to be the pros is you'll see some very seamless transitions. Some things Bennett's going to have to work on, no doubt, but I do think that a lot of the initial hiccups and landmines that you might see for young quarterbacks, I think Bennett being, 35 years old. No, I'm just kidding. But I mean,
he'll be 26,
right? I mean, he's an older guy. But I do think that with that and his challenges and determination, his story, he's a gritty guy who's not going to give up on you. So Duggan had the nice story, kind of came out of nowhere, right? He was the starter, then he wasn't the starter, and then he was the starter again, led TCU to the national championship game. So he has a great story as well. I just don't think he's nearly as refined or polished for the NFL game. So I think where you see Bennett go in the fourth round, I think Bennett could I think Duggan, you'll probably see fifth, sixth round type thing as teams try and fill out their draft, and he's going to be more of a project than what Stetson Bennett is.
I think I agree with you. Here's the reason why I posed the question in the first place is because essentially, not just because they were the last two guys that we got to watch play a college football game, right? Like, they're essentially the same guy, not in terms of their physicality or their build, but their makeup in terms of their mentality, their makeup in terms of their resiliency,
Persistence, maybe.
Yeah, also that. Yeah, their persistence. I just think that it's a great story, and they weren't necessarily. I know that Max Duggan kind of had to will his team along in a lot of situations, whereas Stetson Bennett needed to just captain the ship a lot of times. And don't get me wrong, fantastic playmaker in his own right, but to me, this is 6 of one, half dozen of another. Now, what I do think is that Stetson Bennett, yes, he is older. He has many more snaps under his belt that has allowed him to refine his game. And he got to play against some of the best defenses. And hell, he got to go against the best defense every day in practice, right? When you do good on good, which I'm sure doesn't happen all the time in Georgia, but it happens enough that it will make him better. Yeah. So like that is a huge plus for Stetson Bennett. Max Duggan, look, he has a will that is hard to deny, right? Like, that dude carried TCU through some of those dog days games, some of those games that they had no business winning. They were winning because Max Duggan carried them through them. I do think Stetson Bennett goes first. I think the SEC pedigree gives him just a leg higher. But if you go through and look at, the combine and what they did, Stetson Bennett, he participated in everything. Excuse me, not Stetson Bennett. Max Duggan competed in everything. Stetson didn't. Not for nothing, but the want to is there from Max Duggan. I think whatever team he lands on, I don't think Max Duggan is a starter in this league. And likewise, I'm not necessarily sold that Stetson Bennett is a starter in this league on a consistent basis. But I do think it is interesting that these two guys who played in the national championship, different playing styles because different things were asked of them, and different paths to get to where they were playing in that national title game. But I still think I think it's an interesting watch. It's going to be an interesting watch to see how those chips fall. But I wouldn't be surprised if they kind of go right around each other in terms of when they're picked. I do think both of them get drafted, though. Like, that's obviously, we kind of assume that with the question posed, but I think they kind of go near each other.
So I've got Max Duggan, especially kind of going through this. He's going to be sixth or seventh round guy. Realistically, I think the Cowboys are going to probably scoop him up in the 6th or 7th round type of deal, right? Like, they've got the
hometown discount, yeah,
right. Like that's where I think that we're going to see him ultimately go, is probably the Cowboys to a backup third string practice squad type of guy there. Now Stetson Bennett is going to go pick 124. That's where I've got him. That's a 4th round pick. And
who owns the 124th pick, Derek?
Well, that would be the Baltimore Ravens, would be owning the 124th overall pick there. One, they've got some questions at the quarterback position long term there. The fact that he played really well in the new offensive coordinator's position, or new offensive coordinator's scheme for the last few years, won a national championship with the guy 2 years in a row there. I think that there's a lot to be said there, right? If nothing else, he comes in kind of as that pro-ready type of deal. The Ravens also don't have any quarterbacks under, besides a franchise tag type of thing, under contract this season. So, and not only that, like, Stetson Bennett isn't as athletic, isn't as elusive as Lamar Jackson, but they can ultimately, you don't have to drastically modify the playbook either to do that one. And it's a playbook that Stetson's already familiar with. So that's where I'm calling my shot, is pick 124 for Stetson Bennett.